I have twofold. Like, my ancestors gave me all this power and all this knowledge from what they've experienced, and I can look it up on Google or YouTube or whatever. And I have my own experiences. All these things that I've seen with my own eyes, I felt with my own skin, right? I've smelled, I've heard, I can use all of my own senses to dictate how I want my future to go. And I can be very confident in that because I have my own consciousness of where I'm at. Now we can go, guys. What is going on? My name is Jake Smith, and this is Beyond the Physical. This channel is about the spiritual stuff, the esoteric stuff, the metaphysical stuff, the philosophical stuff. So if you like any of that, you're going to love this video and you're going to love this channel. Today, we are talking about confidence and consciousness and how those two things really relate. Because if you understand consciousness, you're going to understand why you should be confident. It's important to know because consciousness has a lot to do with this confidence thing. And I'm going to kind of talk about that today in this video. Okay, so what is consciousness? What is awareness? What is this elusive thing that, I've already mentioned in a couple other videos. So this is kind of what it is in just basic terms. So I am aware right now of what this room holds. I'm aware that it's dark. I'm aware that it's silent. I'm aware that it's quiet. I'm aware that outside it's dark and there might be a breeze going on. That's just what I know for right now. This is what I am aware of. Okay. What I am conscious of is my own behaviors. I am conscious of me and how I react to the things that are outside or in this room. I'm conscious that I'm moving my finger. I'm conscious that I'm thinking, right? These are all things that I'm conscious of because I know that it's happening. Like, I understand how it works. So I'm conscious of how it works. Okay. So I'm going to show you in this image of how consciousness has sort of evolved, right? And in this image, it's the image of evolution. Okay, so people have also evolved over time physically, but also mentally and consciousnessly. I don't think that's a word, but consciously. So this is me on this evolutionary chart, right? Or this is us. This is our generation. This is me. And this is my caveman ancestor. Okay. All right, caveman. And there are some steps in between, some generations in between, but for right now, this is kind of what we're looking at. And me, as of now, I have the culmination of all these different ancestries and a lot of the staples that they've given me in my life, right? So what are those things? Like, in consciousness-wise, I am conscious that there is fire. We have a wheel, we have water, right? Those are what caveman gave me. Like, they explored this element of fire, right? And then that evolved, right? Evolution over time. This conscious element of fire has evolved over time, giving me fire. So that's what consciousness is. It's grown over time. So that's what the cavemen have given me. Okay, so now let's think about it opposite. This is the more fun part, the more abstract part. Okay, so what if I were to go back in time to give the cavemans? What would I give them? Well, I would say, okay, caveman, it would be great if you could have modern plumbing, right? Like, all right, so because I know that if you have modern plumbing, you can stay away from illnesses, and that could probably help you from not dying. And that's important because you are my DNA, and the more DNA, the better, whenever, right? So I'm just thinking of him. I'm like, all right, so modern plumbing. What we're going to do is we're going to have your house, right? And I'm trying to explain this to him. I'm trying to give him some of my own consciousness from what his origin has given me. So I'm going to go back in time to give him the whole thing. And I'm going to say, okay, you have these great houses. We're going to run water through them by these levees. And in these levees and with this water system, there's going to be a water pump. And through the water pressure, you're going to have this pump. And you're also going to have a water heater. Oh boy. Okay. Stick with me. This is how you're going to be talking to them. And you're going to say, through this faucet, there's going to be a way for you to change the hot and cold temperatures. And as you're talking, you're like, wow, this is actually kind of elaborate. There's a lot of consciousness that went into this. But when you finish, you're going to be like, okay, how much does that make sense to you? Does that make any sense to you? And the caveman will just be sitting there like, fire? Mallet? Water, right? Like, there's no reason why a caveman would understand even the basic parts of that. And so this is what consciousness is. This is how consciousness evolves over time. This is why it's important over time to understand where you're at in your own now. Okay? So we hear about the power of now and what it means to be in the now, right? So I'm going to further explain that as far as consciousness goes as well. Okay? Because it's important to understand and be thankful for all these things that these like ancestors have given us, right? And worked for and developed, right? So that's part of it. But also, what if we were to just consider this instead of evolution? What if this were to be ourselves on our own journey? Say like this was us as a baby, right? Year 1. And this is me year 30, because this is where I'm headed. Okay. So I'm headed there, and these are all stages of my life. Okay. So, thankfully by this time period, by like year 5, I had already learned what bathing is, what sanitation looks like, how all of that works. I literally crammed like generations and generations and generations of consciousness into this 5-year time frame for me. Now, what is the rest of it? Okay, the rest of it is all this experience that I have. Everything that I've heard, listened to, thought, felt, that is all consciousness too. So I am dealing with the great elements of my ancestors mixed with the great elements of my own experiences through my own eyes, through my own DNA, right? Through my own journey. Because that's what it is. It's our own journey. We're using everything that we know or we can fit into our brains to help us on our way, on our journey through this journey of consciousness. And as we continue to get older and continue to experience more, we continually get more of this consciousness, right? And this consciousness gives us options. Because as I try to experience, I try to navigate things, I start to understand what can work and what can't work, or what won't work for me, or whatever, right? So all these things kind of play into each other. But what does this mean as far as our confidence? Because that's why, I made this video. It's like, it's okay, it has to end up with this confidence part at some point. Okay? So the confidence comes when you understand that, I have this generation of ancestors. I have this generation of ancestors. I have this generation of ancestors to work from. And I have Google, I have YouTube to learn from. Okay? I have all these ways to understand and to embrace this consciousness that's come before me. But not only that, I have this element of my life. I have this part of my life. I have that part of my life. So, I'm using 2 arrows for the price of 1, right? But this could be like a previous generation, but it also could be just me when I was young, right? And as I continue to get older, I can have confidence that, hey, like I'm in the now, right? But I have all of this stuff that's happened before me to help me with my confidence in the now. And why is this important? Like, this seems so obvious, right? But what happens a lot of times is we let other people kind of dictate what our tomorrow will look like. So we have this tomorrow, but we don't really know exactly what this tomorrow will look like. We have an idea, right? We have an idea of what 5 years will look like, but we even have a less idea what 10 years will look like. And we have these people in our lives that will say, okay, this is what's going to happen tomorrow for you. I know it. And you can listen to them, or you don't have to. You just take their advice, or you don't. But nobody knows your experiences and the experiences before you like you do. And if this person is talking to you like they know better, you can ask them, okay, so what's the reasoning? What's your reasoning? Okay, well, you tell me. And they say, you are this kind of person. I know that this is who you are. Like, you do not do this, you do not do that. And you can sit there and go, wow, this person seems to have me all figured out. This person seems to know who I am better than I know myself. And that's where you can be confident saying, no, you know what? You can tell me, you can educate me on what has happened with my previous ancestors or what's worked for you or whatever, but nobody knows my experience and what works for me and what doesn't work for me like I know what works for me, that doesn't work for me. So you can help me understand my path, but you can't tell me exactly what's going to happen. And the reason why you can't tell me what's going to happen is because you and I are both living in the same now. We're both living the same timeline. We're both living in now. So you can assume what will happen to me tomorrow just as much as I can assume what will happen to me tomorrow. Equal, right? But the more that you're confident in what has happened to you, the more that you can reflect on your past, the more that you can understand what has happened to you, what has happened to your ancestors, what has happened to your parents, what has happened to your grandparents, the better and the more confident you can feel in your own personal consciousness in the now. The more you can reflect on your own traumas, the more you can reflect on your own experiences, shortcomings, victories, whatever, the better you're going to be more conscious and more enabled for your future. And this is why meditation is important, right? Because I can't really meditate a whole lot on, I can meditate on the future, right? Or what it might bring and the affirmations and law of attraction and stuff. I fully believe in that, but it's a lot more practical for me to also understand what happened in the past and understand who I am through the past. All very important, because we can use our past and we use others' past to try to dictate what we want for our lives and what can be in the future for us. And we can be confident in ourselves because we are living in the now just as much as anyone else is. Okay? So I'm going to talk about the now a lot with consciousness, because the more you can live in the now and not be, traumatized by the past or nervous or anxious in the future, the better you're going to be and more confident you're going to be in your own personal consciousness right now. Okay? So say I'm living in the now like I should. However, I start to feel like there were some things in my past that I can't let go of. Unfortunately, I am struggling to forgive myself for certain things. And I start to analyze myself for what has happened, right? I start to say, okay, and this goes on forgiveness. So before I keep going, this is about forgiveness. This is forgiving yourself. And this is important too, about being confident in yourself. So knowing and being conscious is a lot about just knowledge. Like, I have to go through it to understand what it is that I'm going through. I mean, it sounds so simple, but if I were to make this video, like I am now, so I'm making this video, right? And 2 weeks from now, I look back and I go, dang, that video was horrible. I butchered it. I manipulated words that I didn't mean to say. I said things that, I wish I could take back. I kind of regret it. I posted it live, so a lot of people saw it, right? But now I'm like, okay, I can either decide to continue to hate that part of me that chose this decision that was what I thought was best for me, or I can try to just say, okay, I know what happened. I now understand that there are things that I could add or subtract from that video, right? So this is only a stepping point for me. This is only a stepping point. And if you could think of yourself as a ladder, getting taller, just like, these humans are actually growing, and saying, okay, that video, I messed up. There is some things I should have said. I left out some things, whatever. Or I said something I shouldn't have said. That's part of life. Yeah, I'm not going to know. And this is why, honestly, it's tough for me to make these videos sometimes. Because I'm sitting there like, oh, well, this will be better, or this will be better, or this will work easier. But I will never know exactly what that is until I'm finished with it. And until I have some time in between. But I might as well be very conscious about the now and be very conscious and understanding of what's going on right now, because nobody will really know what's best for me in the future. And this is kind of what it's about, right? You know, you hear it a lot, like hindsight is 20/20. Like if you want to look back and decide, like anyone can look back and try to say, oh, that probably would have been better for me, or that was the wrong mistake or whatever, and I don't like that past self. But it takes someone who's like really, you know, looking at it logically, and that can remove their own emotions of feeling guilty about it and say, okay, it was just something that happened. It was just an event, right? I would never go back to my caveman brothers and go, you're an idiot for not understanding modern plumbing. You're dumb for, you know, not knowing how politics work or the law, the judicial system works, right? I would never criticize them for that because they just don't know. They haven't even experienced it yet. So you shouldn't criticize yourself for those same things if you just didn't know any better. Now, like, it's important to listen to what's going on around you and to be aware of what's going on around you. That's why I was saying it too, because being aware is like, hey, if I want to be a lawyer, what are the steps that I need to take to become a lawyer? Well, I should probably see if I want to be a lawyer first. So I'll become more consciousness of what being a lawyer looks like. So I'll get online and look at what a lawyer looks like. And that's living in the now as well. I'm going to take my now and go, okay, I'm going to make decisions just to see what being a lawyer would look like. And that's also living in the now. But if I'm concerned, I'm overly anxious about all this different stuff about where my life is going to go, then that's not necessarily living in the now. It's just being worried about the future, right? I can be confident in my own consciousness of where I'm at. You know, I have twofold, like my ancestors gave me all this power and all this knowledge from what they've experienced. And I can look it up on Google or YouTube or whatever. And I have my own experiences. All these things that I've seen with my own eyes, I felt with my own skin, right? I've smelled, I've heard, you know. I can use all of my own senses to dictate how I want my future to go. And I can be very confident in that because I have my own consciousness of where I'm at right now. And so with that, my name is Jake Smith, and this has been Beyond the Physical. So like and subscribe.